So today we are going to do a what's in my bookcase. Things are a little complicated because my bookshelf is in fact above my bed. I've had to create a very elaborate contraption to try and showcase my bookcase, and I still didn't even get it all the way in. I'll show you guys how crazy the setup is right now. We are gonna start off with my bottom shelf, Paper Things. Paper Things is a book that I had to read before 7th grade, I think. I don't remember anything it's about. It's by Jennifer Richard Johnson. The back says, "Stay together always." So it must be a story about unity. I have an inkling that I liked it. We have one of my all-time favorite books, Normal People by Sally Rooney. Anyone who knows me knows that I am a whore for Sally Rooney. Me and Sally Rooney, we're deep. We go way back. I mean, only back to this summer, but way back nonetheless. This book, every time I tell people it's my favorite book, I have a really hard time explaining it because a lot of the books I like are just like character analysis and they're not very plot driven. It's like, yeah, like it's a story about a popular high school boy and an unpopular high school girl who end up getting together, and everyone's like, oh, ew, that's so cliche. It's actually such a good book. I highly recommend this book, especially if you're a teenage girl like me and you're depressed. We have The Book Thief, which I'm pretty sure I actually accidentally stole this copy from my school, so I might not be able to graduate. Well, we'll cross the bridge when we get to it, I suppose. This is probably one of my least favorite books ever. The Book Thief by Marcus Zuzak. Zuzak? I'm not sure. So I had to read this book for school, obviously, because I stole it from school. Every time I would sit down to read the assignment, I would fall asleep. So I started sitting at a desk to read. I would fall asleep. So I started standing up to read. Brace yourselves. I fell asleep standing up reading this book. I don't know what it was. Maybe it's the fact that I was in 7th grade. But this book was so horrible. At my job, I shelf at a library, right? Every time I have to put this book on a shelf, like I get like flashbacks. Like I have anger towards this book. But for some reason I keep it on my shelf. I don't know why I accidentally stole this. Maybe because I just keep forgetting about it because it's such like a boring book. I don't know. So that's that book. We have Speak by Lori Hulse Anderson. This is a great book. This is a really great book for high schoolers, I think. I bought this book off of Thrift Books, I think, for really, really cheap. Because I never buy books, but I like had a feeling I would like this book, so I bought it myself instead of checking it out from the library. You can see that it's pre-loved. This is one of the first books that I really started underlining stuff in because usually I don't have my own copies. See if I can find some good underlines. Okay. If you read this book, I would suggest to read Triggers beforehand. It is a really good book though. I really enjoyed it. It's about this freshman who lost all of her friends due to an unfortunate circumstance. It's really not her fault. It's way more complex than that. I just don't want to give too much away. We have arrived at our first book on the shelf that I have not read yet. Used to Be Eaten by John Steinbeck. I bought this at my local library's book sale. I bought this for maybe 25 cents. I actually picked it up because I think Emma Chamberlain read it, and then I had read a John Steinbeck book in school of Mice and Men, and I liked it, and I like the cover. I think it's really pretty. This is the most recent addition to my bookshelf. This is What I Know Now, Letters to My Younger Self. It's just like a bunch of famous women who have done well for themselves. My dad bought this for me. We were at the store. He was just like, I think this would be really cool for you. You could learn a lot from it. So I haven't cracked into it quite yet, but yeah. We have another book that I've not read yet. I know, sorry, I know this one's really popular. Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. This is actually my aunt's copy. I've not gotten around to it yet, but I borrowed it from her because I've heard so much about this book. I actually don't know really anything about it. The Last Hero by Riordan. I was genuinely one of the biggest Percy Jackson fans you could have found in elementary school. Still, like, my #1 travel place on my list is Greece because of this book. Well, not this specific book, but that series. I actually stole this from my library that I work at. I didn't steal it. It was in the discard pile because it's got a lot of rips and tears, but it was going to the dumpster and I was like, oh, I want to have a copy of this for myself, so I took it from my library. You can see. I just have such a special connection to the Percy Jackson series and everything Rick Riordan has written. Next, we have one of the books that I bought on my birthday trip up north. I found the most beautiful little bookshop, antique bookshop, that was in an old church. It had millions of books in there, like I'm not over exaggerating, and they were just piled everywhere. It wasn't really organized, so I was just kind of walking around picking up books. I think my main draw for this book was the cover was so beautiful. I actually have no idea what it's about. Called The Life of Oliver Goldsmith. One of the other books that I picked up on this trip was Sapphira and the Slave Girl by Willa Cather. I have not read this book yet. Two main draws to this book. One, that it was my favorite color. The other thing is, you know, I'm always trying to broaden my perspective, learn more about history and how it truthfully unfolded, and so I was intrigued by this book as well. Another book that I bought while I was on that trip was Secrets of the Congdon Mansion by Joe Kimball. I'm actually currently reading this one. I'm on page 44, and it's just covering the Congdon murders, which are so intriguing to me because I went to go visit the mansion. It seemed so normal, and then I stopped in a different bookstore. Then I bought this one in. I saw this and I was like, oh, okay, you've got my attention. It gets twisted. I'm not even very far in. Next we have Normal by Magdalena Newman. I really liked this book. My mom actually recommended it to me. It's about a boy who was born into a family of an immigrant mother. Her son actually has Treacher-Collins syndrome, a craniofacial condition. In case you don't know what that is, if you've read the book Wonder or you've heard about Wonder, it's the same condition that the boy in Wonder has. I really recommend the read. I thought it was really engaging and really perspective broadening. Next we have White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. My mom also gave me this book. She recommended it to me the summer of 2020. I got a decent way through. I think at the time I was just in 8th grade, and so the reading was kind of complex for me and I wasn't really able to grasp it. I was a little confused, and so I wasn't able to make my whole way through the book. And I realized that in order to broaden my perspectives and learn about the Black experience, I don't need to read very difficult to read information, and I can just read stuff that's still very true and very important, but at a reading level that is meant for me. Last but not least, for the bottom shelf, we have Everything Everything by Nicola Yoon. I read this quite a while ago. I think I was in middle school. I thought it was good at the time. I remember liking it. I was really into romance books back then. It's about a girl who has like a rare disease. She can't go outside, but then she sees this boy who moves in and she gets intrigued and chaos ensues. Next, we have The Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown. I feel like I don't really need to give an introduction for this book. I feel like everyone kind of knows what this book is. I haven't read it yet, if I'm gonna be completely honest. This is another book I bought at my library's local bookstore. Who is Afraid of Virginia Woolf by Edward Albee. This was another library book sale find. I also have not read this one. Most of the book sale ones I haven't gotten around to yet. Classic. Just picked it up because I knew I'd get around to it someday and it was super cheap. And yeah. Mansfield Park by Jane Austen. I actually have only read like 3/4 of a Jane Austen book before, and it was, of course, Pride and Prejudice. Tried to read it last year when I was trying to finally get back into reading after like 3 years of not doing any. It was so hard for me to get through because that was the first book I was jumping into, and it was like, what is going on? I don't understand. She's got like kind of that old English. And so I had to stop. But this was another library book sale find because I really want to get into Jane Austen. And so I bought a bunch of Jane Austen there. But yeah, Mansfield Park. Every 8th grader's favorite book, Outsiders by S.E. Hinton. I loved this book in 8th grade. I thought it was so fun, so cool. I, of course, loved Soda Pop. I thought he was so attractive. Thought Dolly was so attractive. I bought this copy at the book sale just for nostalgia's purpose. I mean, it was so cheap. There's no point not to. Like 25 cents. It's basically about just like conflicting social groups, not even classes necessarily, but they are different economic classes and social classes. It talks about that and how it affects people to be in the lower economic class and how it affects people to be in the lower social class. It is still all white boys though, so it's like, I mean, you're a white man. All right. We've got Letters Home by Sylvia Plath. This was another book sale find. I've not read this yet just because I'm kind of scared. Kind of gotta be in the right mindset for Sylvia Plath, you know? Like, you really gotta brace yourself for Sylvia Plath. We've got another Jane Austen and another library book sale purchase. Emma. I have not read this one yet. Like I said, only read half of 3/4 of Pride and Prejudice. But I really want to get into Jane Austen, so Emma. Okay, this is feeling a little redundant by this point, but we have Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen, another library book sale purchase. A lot of the shelf is library book store purchases because it's my smallest shelf, and so it only fits really small paperbacks, and most of the library book sale purchases were paperbacks. This is also a library book sale purchase, but it's The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath, one of my favorite books. A lot of people have criticized it for some racism throughout, and I completely agree. There's some stuff that is really hard to get by. If you do read this, I would recommend reading triggers before, understand all the controversial aspects before going into it. Next, probably one of the most interesting ones on here, I would say, by far. The dictionary. I got this in 3rd grade. I don't know why, I just have kept it. I cut out the word music and I hung it on my wall. I cut out the word coffee and hung it on my wall. I cut out New York, I think, and put it on my wall. It's always good to have a dictionary around. One of my next most favorite books in the whole world, Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky. One of the best books ever written, I think, especially for a teenager, especially for someone who struggles with mental health. So crazy relatable. I finished it and I answered all of the discussion questions in the back in my own journal, just out of my own free will, because this book was so good and I had so many thoughts about it. I absolutely recommend this for anyone. Read triggers first. It's kind of a common theme with the books I like, I guess. Next, we have another library book sale purchase. Are we surprised at this point? The Bluest by Toni Morrison. I actually checked this out from the library and then I was at the book sale and I saw this and I was like, oh, perfect. Like, I'm actually just gonna read my own copy. This book, I think I really got into underlining and stuff. I underlined, misery colored by the greens and blues in my mother's voice took all of the grief out of the words and left me with a conviction that pain was not only endurable, it was sweet. Toni Morrison is an incredible writer. She has the most beautiful prose I've ever read, I think, and it's actually pretty easy to follow. She covers such important topics. She does it in such a powerful way. I found this book so good, and it's probably one of my favorites. I thought it was beautiful. She did an amazing job with this book. I absolutely recommend it. Next we have, you guessed it, another library book sale find. It is George Orwell, Animal Farm. I got to page 23, it looks like. I started reading this book because I lost the one I was currently reading, and then I found that book, and so I just kind of stopped. I think I kind of forgot about it. It was good so far. I'm not huge into, like, making a complete story metaphor. I understand the purpose and the power in it, but it's like, okay, like, I understand, like, capitalism sucks. Right there with you, buddy, but why did we have to do it through animals? I don't know, maybe I didn't get to the great big point yet because I was only on page 26. I wrote a lot down in this book too. Here I have just like written, I understand Orwell is trying to make a point of the evils of materialism, but doesn't revoke the misogynistic undertone of the way he went about the criticisms. So you can tell this isn't my favorite book. Alright, you can breathe a sigh of relief. This is not a library bookstore find, but I did buy this from one of the previously mentioned places. This is from the Up North bookstore that I went to on my birthday. Well, it was before my birthday because on my actual birthday I had COVID. This is just Witty Words from Wise Women by B.J. Gallagher. Quips, quotes, and comebacks. I haven't read any of it yet, but I just was intrigued by it. I thought it'd be funny. Okay, so we are officially done with my middle row. Next we have the top shelf, which you can't even see. You can't even see any of somehow. You're able to see like half of it at the beginning of this. I don't know how you're not able to see any of it now, but well, it doesn't really matter. You don't really need to see it. But first up, we have the one and only Twilight by Stephenie Meyer. I love this series. I watched the movies in September 2020 and was hooked. And I finally read the books last summer. I found this book at Goodwill, actually. Goodwill has a scary amount of the Twilight movies and the Twilight books. So if you're ever looking for them, go there first. Don't buy them online. Please don't buy them from Amazon, please. I feel like not much needs to be said about this. One of my favorite books. I won't hear any criticisms. I know there's many criticisms, but I won't hear them. Okay, literally all of the next ones are just going to be Twilight books, and I want you to be braced for that. Next we have Newman by Stephenie Meyer. This one I also found at Goodwill. This is my favorite movie, but not my favorite book in the series. I still liked it though, I think. One of my favorite parts in this book is when Stephenie Meyer just represents depression by the months passing. I think that is so cool and just so true. Next we have Eclipse by Stephenie Meyer. This was actually probably my favorite book in the series. Maybe Twilight, maybe Eclipse, but it's my least favorite movie. I don't know, not much to say. I like it. Last in the series technically, but not the last Twilight book. We have Breaking Dawn by Stephenie Meyer. I got this one and Eclipse for Christmas from my dad. My largest criticism is that we have to read from Jacob's perspective for such a large chunk of this book. It makes me nauseous, it makes me ill, it makes me want to vomit. Otherwise, it was decent. Next we have Midnight Sun by Stephenie Meyer. I was crushed, heartbroken, left in despair when I thought I'd finished all the books in the Twilight series, when I had finished the last page of Breaking Dawn, and then I found out about Midnight Sun, and I was revived. I love this book. I think it's great. Edward's one of my favorite characters, so getting his perspective was really interesting. It wasn't redundant to me by any means. I thought it actually had a great new perspective and a lot of new material, so I really appreciated that. Okay, so we unfortunately have to have a brief intermission because I forgot I had choir tonight, and I left like 10 minutes later than I was supposed to. So I will see you guys in a little bit. Lighting's gonna be different. My bad. Hi, Abbey editing. You're gonna continue to hear my dog use her squeaky toy in the background, and apologies. Just bear with me. Okay, we're back. It's been a couple hours. I'm ready to dive into it. And we have the iconic Oreo milk mug. You got your milk in here, and you got your Oreos in here. And usually there's like a little clip thing that you can like dunk your Oreos with. Please don't cancel me for drinking milk. So I believe we left off with Midnight Sun, and so that brings us to Life and Death by Stephenie Meyer, which is another new perspective of Twilight. I'm gonna be honest, I didn't love this book. It was really hard for me to get through. I understand what she was trying to do. Trying to pull in a little feminist moment. I just wasn't here for it. Yet I still own the book. It's basically like Edward Cullen turns into Edith Cullen, a girl vampire, and Bella Swan turns into Beau Swan, a boy human. Next is the book we had on the last vlog. The Twilight Saga, the official illustrated guide by Stephenie Meyer. I thought it was cool. It's really only for deep Twilight nerds like me. It was good. It was a cool edition, I thought. We have the famed Pride and Prejudice that I was talking about earlier in the video. It looks like I made it to page 125. Grueling. This was so difficult to get through, and I was so disappointed because I was so excited for it. I'll probably come back to it someday. I really like the cover. The one I got, I think it's really cutesy. Alright, we're on the home stretch here, guys. So we have It's Kind of a Funny by Ned Vizzini. I also got this at Goodwill. I think it's based off of the author's real life experiences. I haven't read it yet, but I'm pretty sure this kid goes to a mental hospital. I'm excited to read it. I really enjoy stories that delve into mental health, and I think it's supposed to be kind of comical too. This is probably the book that is nearest and dearest to my heart. Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. Not only do I absolutely adore this book, it is one of my favorites I connect with so many other characters in this book. As is the point, you're kind of supposed to find someone in at least one of the characters, if not all. Of course, I'm mostly connected with Jo, as I think a lot of young women do. It's also my grandpa's mom's original copy. So it is incredibly old and incredibly loved and aged. You can see the pages yellowing, but it means a lot to me. I think it's a really beautiful cover too. I love the color red, as you can see. And last but not least, we have The Book of Dahlia by Eliza Albert. I think this is a really interesting book. I've literally never heard anyone talk about it. This was a book sale library and it intrigued me. I just picked it up because I thought the cover was kind of pretty. I read the title jacket and I thought it was super interesting. But basically this really crappy woman develops cancer and it's fatal. And it's kind of like her discovering, okay, like, is this payback for being a shitty person or what's going on? And it's just a lot of look back at her life, and I think it's really interesting, and I highly recommend. I guess that's my bookshelf tour. I hope you enjoyed. I know I sure did. Comment any book recommendations down below if you have them, or just like your opinions on any of the books I mentioned. Have a wonderful rest of your day.